Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel, and today I am going to talk about thyroid disease. So before starting the topic, let's know some basic. So in the basic, first of all, we should learn that in the hypothalamus it makes a hormone that is thyroid releasing hormone, and this thyroid releasing hormone acts on the anterior pituitary, which will ultimately secrete the two main hormones, that is thyroid stimulating hormone known as TSH and another hormone prolactin. So prolactin is not a matter of discussion now. So at first we will talk about the TSH. So TSH that is secreted from the anterior pituitary will ultimately act on the receptors of the thyroid gland, and whenever the thyroid receptors are activated, that will form ultimately the T4, and the T4 will be again converted into T3, that is the active form of thyroid hormone. So T3 is the main active ingredient that acts on various tissues and leads to various metabolic activities in the body. So in this way, the thyroid hormone are produced. So basically, whenever we see in the blood, we will get the two basically thyroid hormone, that is T4 and the T3, but the active constituent, that is T3. So T4 will be again converted into T3 for its action. Now, there are basically the alterations in this hormone, and due to this alteration in this T4 and T3, there will be some manifestation of disease, and those diseases are known as thyroid diseases. Now, at first, I would like to tell you that what is hyperthyroidism and what is hypothyroidism. So basically, increase in level of thyroid hormones is known as hyperthyroidism, and decrease in level of the thyroid hormones is known as hypothyroidism. So now let's talk about the hyperthyroidism. Hyperthyroidism is also known as thyrotoxicosis. So very important topic. Many of the students also get confused about what is hyperthyroidism, what is hyperthyroid, what is euthyroid. So let's know some detail about this. So hyperthyroidism means increase in the level of thyroid hormone in the blood. So basically the total thyroid hormone, or basically the free thyroid hormones, that is T3 and T4 levels will be increased in blood no matter whatever the source of the thyroid hormone is. So if there will be increment, only and only absolute increment, that is known as thyrotoxicosis. But if the thyrotoxicosis is basically due to the problem in the thyroid itself, or we can say that, let's suppose thyroid gland is itself forming more amount of hormone, then in that condition we will tell that is hyperthyroid. The thyroid gland is in hyperthyroid state. So hyperthyroid state and hyperthyroidism both are different things. Hyperthyroid means increase in level of thyroid hormone, but that should be by the increase in production by the thyroid gland itself. But in overall, we can say that thyrotoxicosis is a broad term, and hyperthyroidism is a somehow the short term in comparison to the thyrotoxicosis. Now let's talk about the different causes of hyperthyroidism. So different causes of hyperthyroidism is Graves' disease. So these three are the above three are the most common causes, and in between these three causes, Graves' disease is the most commonest one. So Graves' disease, toxic multinodular goiter, solitary thyroid nodule. So in these three main things, the problem will be basically in the thyroid gland. So they will ultimately result in the increase in level of thyroid hormone, and there are other somehow less common conditions like the viral infection that will ultimately cause thyroid inflammation and thyrotoxicosis practice. We'll talk about this. There are some drugs which will ultimately lead to increase in level of thyroid hormone. Example, amiodarone, and there is an effect known as job bestow effect. So we'll talk about this also, and we will see that how in the pregnancy sometimes the thyroid level can increase. We'll see this how the pregnancy will lead to increase level of thyroid hormone. And first of all, we'll talk about hyperthyroidism, then we will ultimately go on the hypothyroidism topic. So now we will discuss the different causes of different important causes of hyperthyroidism. So the first important cause is Graves' disease. So before the entry of the fortified iodine in the food, there were the toxic nodular goiter or solitary nodular goiter were the most common causes of hyperthyroidism. But nowadays, due to the fortified iodine, the incidence of the toxic nodular goiter has been decreased, and due to this, the Graves' disease is now one of the most commonest causes of hyperthyroidism. So in Graves' disease, there will be production of autoantibodies. So what kind of autoantibodies are these? These are such special autoantibodies which are actually long-acting thyroid stimulating antibodies, also known as LATs antibodies. So they are basically acting like TSH. They are not exactly TSH, but they will mimic the action of TSH. So ultimately, they will also act on thyroid gland, and they will increase the level of T3 and T4 in the blood. And whenever the T3 and T4 level in the blood increases, it will give negative feedback mechanism. It will give negative feedback effect on the pituitary gland, and ultimately causing the TSH hormone to produce less. So therefore, in this patient, the level of TSH will be actually decreased. So why there will be decreased level of TSH? As the T3 and T4 are increased, and this T3 and T4 will give negative feedback mechanism to the pituitary gland, and that's why the TSH level will get decreased here. So in this patient, while talking about the blood investigation, you will find like this: the T3 and T4 will be increased, the TSH will be decreased. So such kind of presentation we will get in the Graves' disease. So we are basically discussing on the different causes of the hyperthyroidism. So we discussed the Graves' disease. So let me explain that there are two main things: primary hyperthyroidism and secondary hyperthyroidism. So primary means, always you should take one simple concept that whenever I will say that primary hyperthyroidism or primary any disease, the problem will be in that particular part. It means, and while I am saying that the primary hyperthyroidism, it means the problem should be in the thyroid gland itself. So let us suppose what happens in the Graves' disease. In the Graves' disease, the thyroid gland is basically producing the large amount of hormones. The thyroid gland is producing large amount of hormones, and the pituitary is not actually doing anything. The pituitary has no any problem now. Pituitary is all right. The problem is lying in the thyroid gland. So we can say that the Graves' disease is actually primary hyperthyroidism. So if whatever the reason will be, let's suppose someone has any kind of cancerous lesion or carcinomatous lesion in the thyroid gland, and now due to this carcinomatous lesion, the thyroid gland, the production of the thyroid hormone is increased. So again, the problem is in the thyroid gland, and if the problem is in the thyroid gland, then we will call it as primary hyperthyroidism. But if the problem is in the pituitary, let's suppose someone has the problem is in the pituitary, someone has pituitary adenoma, and due to this pituitary adenoma, there will be large amount of production of the TSH. Due to this, there will be large amount of production of the TSH, and due to this large amount of TSH production, there will be large amount of T3 and T4. So the problem is not in the thyroid gland, the problem is in the pituitary, and thus thyroid gland is following the pituitary. So we can say that in the secondary, the problem lies beyond the thyroid gland. So that is why you should take one simple concept. If the problem is in the thyroid gland, we will say that primary hyperthyroidism. No matter the cause will be either any kind of defect, any kind of carcinoma, and if the problem is in the pituitary, we will call it as secondary hyperthyroidism. Now the third cause is actually any drugs. Let's suppose you are taking any drugs like for example Evidarone, and in this drug influences the thyroid gland to produce large amount of hormone. So the gland is actually not having the behavior of producing large amount of hormone. The drug is influencing the gland to produce large amount of hormone. So in this condition also, it is actually that's why it's not primary hyperthyroidism. Drugs is one of the cause of the hyperthyroidism, not primary. It is taken. So we are basically discussing on the different causes of the hyperthyroidism. So we discussed the Graves' disease. So let me explain that there are two main things: primary hyperthyroidism and secondary hyperthyroidism. So primary means, see, always you should take one simple concept that whenever I will say that primary hyperthyroidism or primary any disease, the problem will be in that particular part. It means, while I'm saying that the primary hyperthyroidism, it means the problem should be in the thyroid gland itself. So let us suppose what happens in the Graves' disease. In the Graves' disease, the thyroid gland is basically producing a large amount of hormone. The thyroid gland is producing a large amount of hormone, and the pituitary is not actually doing anything. The pituitary has no any problem now. Pituitary is all right. The problem is lying in the thyroid gland. So we can say that the Graves' disease is actually primary hyperthyroidism. So if whatever the reason will be, let's suppose someone has any kind of cancerous lesion or carcinomatous lesion in the thyroid gland, and now due to this carcinomatous lesion, the thyroid gland, the production of the thyroid hormone is increased. So again, the problem is in the thyroid gland, and if the problem is in the thyroid gland, then we will call it as primary hyperthyroidism. But if the problem is in the pituitary, let's suppose someone has the problem is in the pituitary, someone has pituitary adenoma, and due to this pituitary adenoma, there will be large amount of production of the TSH. Due to this, there will be large amount of production of the TSH, and due to this large amount of TSH production, there will be large amount of T3 and T4. So the problem is not in the thyroid gland, the problem is in the pituitary, and thus thyroid gland is following the pituitary. So we can say that in the secondary, the problem lies beyond the thyroid gland. So that is why you should take one simple concept. If the problem is in the thyroid gland, we will say that primary hyperthyroidism. No matter the cause will be either any kind of defect, any kind of carcinoma, and if the problem is in the pituitary, we will call it as secondary hyperthyroidism. Now the third cause is actually any drugs. Let's suppose you are taking any drugs like for example Evidarone, and in this drug influences the thyroid gland to produce large amount of hormone. So the gland is actually not having the behavior of producing large amount of hormone. The drug is influencing the gland to produce large amount of hormone. So in this condition also, it is actually that's why it's not primary hyperthyroidism. Drugs is one of the cause of the hyperthyroidism, not primary. It is taken. It has a different. Let's suppose it is number 1, number 2 cause. So drugs can be taken as number 3 cause. So now the fourth cause is thyroid factitia. So what is thyroid factitia? It's a very interesting topic. It is also known as thyrotoxicosis factitia. Thyrotoxicosis factitia. So let us suppose that in the Western countries they will actually consume the beef meat, and the beef meat will be having the thyroid gland of the ox. That is having the thyroid gland of ox. So whenever the person will be consuming meat of the beef, they will also consume the thyroid gland of the ox, and this thyroid gland contain the thyroid hormones. And these thyroid hormones, whenever that mixed in the blood of the person, they will ultimately lead to increased level of thyroid hormone, and this will lead to the thyrotoxicosis. So here we saw that the person was consuming somehow hormones in a different way. The person is consuming the thyroid hormone. So if the person has increased level of thyroid hormones due to the consuming of the thyroid hormone, then in that case we will call it as a thyrotoxicosis factitia. I will give second example. Let's suppose in the India and Nepal, if any person is obese, they will ultimately trust an Ayurvedic medicine. So in the Ayurvedic medicine seller person will tell you that I will decrease your obesity in 1 month. I will decrease the 2 kgs in 1 month or 3 kgs in 1 month. But actually, whatever the Ayurvedic medicine, what it has actually, the Ayurvedic medicine will be having levothyroxine. And so if you are consuming the Ayurvedic medicine for decreasing your obesity, you are simply consuming the levothyroxine. And this levothyroxine will ultimately increase your basal metabolic rate, and due to increase in the basal metabolic rate, the person's weight will be decreased. And the person will be very happy that I am having the decreased weight due to Ayurvedic medicine and which has no side effect. But that person is not knowing that actually the Ayurvedic medicine, which are basically telling that the obesity, I will decrease your weight, they are basically cutting levothyroxine. So in this condition also, the person is consuming Ayurvedic medicine and the person is consuming the levothyroxine present in the Ayurvedic medicine. So somehow we can say that indirectly the person is consuming the thyroid hormone. So if the person is consuming the thyroid hormone either via the beef meat mechanism or via the Ayurvedic medicine, and if the level of the thyroid hormone in the blood increases due to the consuming of the exogenous thyroid hormone, then we will call it as a thyrotoxicosis practice. Now let's talk about another example of hypothyroidism. Another cause of hypothyroidism, that is Jod-Basedow effect. So what is Jod-Basedow effect? So friends, we should know one history that in our countries and in many countries of the world where the Himalayas are in abundant amount, here the government have fortified the iodine in the food, especially in the salt, and due to this we are consuming a large amount, we are consuming a small dose of iodine from a very long time. So from a very long time, if we are consuming a small amount of iodine, let's suppose we are consuming the iodines in a small amount for 20 years or 30 years. So in this scenario, the iodine trapping capacity of gland will be increased. And if the iodine trapping capacity of the gland will be increased, then ultimately there will be more production of T3 and T4. So ultimately this will also cause thyrotoxicosis. So if we saw that if we will take iodine in small amount for a very long time, then iodine trapping capacity increases and which will ultimately lead to thyrotoxicosis. So there is a just opposite effect, that is Wolff-Chaikoff effect, which we will discuss later also. This is another Wolff-Chaikoff effect. This effect is just reverse of the Jod-Basedow effect. In this effect, we will give the large amount of iodine, and this large amount of iodine will decrease the iodine capacity. It will decrease the iodine trapping capacity. And will decrease the production of T3 and T4. So we saw that the same iodine is, in one scenario the same iodine is increasing the production, and in the another scenario it is decreasing the production. The only difference is that in the Jod-Basedow effect, the iodine was in a small amount. That is why it was increasing the iodine trapping capacity of the thyroid gland. But in Wolff-Chaikoff effect, the iodine will be given to the person in the large amount, which will decrease the iodine trapping capacity and will decrease the production of T3 and T4. So we will discuss this later also. Now another cause of thyrotoxicosis is gestational thyrotoxicosis. So what is gestational thyrotoxicosis? Let's suppose if any female is having any particular disease, let's suppose if any female is having the gestational trophoblastic disease. Let's suppose if any female is having the gestational trophoblastic disease. And this female is having now, in the gestational trophoblastic, she is having, let's suppose, hydrated form mole. And the female is now producing the large amount of HCG. So the hormone of HCG is now produced in this female in the very large amount, and due to the large amount of HCG, we should know that the molecule of HCG somehow the structure of this molecule is similar to TSH. So its structure is similar to TSH. So increased level of HCG can also act on the thyroid gland, just like the TSH act on thyroid gland, and it will again lead to increase in the level of T3 and T4. So in this condition, the HCG level was actually causing the increase in thyroid hormone. So this type of thyrotoxicosis is known as gestational thyrotoxicosis. So last, another cause which we are discussing is struma ovary. So struma ovary is basically ovarian tumor that is producing the thyroid hormones, and in this way the thyroid levels in the blood will get increased. Okay. So now we will discuss something about thyroid scan. So let's discuss some points on thyroid scan. Actually, there are in the thyroid scan, the radioisotopes are used, basically iodine 132 and 123. It is easy to remember, 3223. So 122 and 123 iodine are used, and they will basically differentiate the nodule is actually cold or warm or hot. So if let's suppose if any person is having let's suppose this is a nodule in the thyroid, there is a nodule, And now, if we have to differentiate that this nodule is cold, or this nodule is warm, or this nodule is hot, so how will you differentiate, or how will you know by the thyroid scan this nodule is cold, this nodule is warm, this nodule is hot? So in the hot nodule, if the nodule is hot, then the iodine uptake, it means this iodine 131, 123 uptake will be increased. So hot nodule will have increased iodine uptake, and if the iodine uptake is increased, then somehow it is a good prognosis. It signifies there is somehow inflammatory processes going on, and that can be easily cured. If the nodule has a very decreased iodine uptake is very less, then it suggests that the nodule is cold. And if the iodine uptake is less, it's suggestive of some malignancy. And in the normal person, so if the nodule is normal nodule means as like the normal thyroid parenchyma, the uptake is normal. The uptake is normal, and in this condition the nodule is warm nodule. So the thyroid if the patient is having the thyroid nodule, then the thyroid scan we can tell the nodule is warm, hot, or cold, and this hot nodule signifies something, warm nodule signifies something. So this is somehow the thing that is useful in the diagnosis of the kind of the thyroid nodule the patient is having. Now let's talk about the clinical feature in hyperthyroidism. So the thyroid hormone, the excess level of thyroid hormone will affect ultimately all the systems in the body. So let's talk about different systems. So in general, we can say the increase in level of thyroid hormone will lead to weight loss. So there is a very important thing that if any person will come off weight loss, we will think that there can be any malnutrition or there can be any decrease in intake of food. But they will give a typical history that they have very good appetite. They are eating normal amount of diet, or we can say that they are increasing the increased amount in comparison to the normal days. But despite the increased appetite, they will have the weight loss. This is very important thing, that they will tell you that I have good appetite, though I am having the weight loss. Another thing, in the skin, we will actually see that actually the thyroid hormones will lead to increase in the basal metabolic rate. And when the basal metabolic rate will increase, there will be more calorie burning. So there will be increased calorigenesis. I mean, the calorie production will also increase, the calorie burning will also increase. And if the calorie burning and production will be increased, so somehow the body is doing more metabolic actions, and due to this, the temperature of the body will get increased. And if the temperature will get increased, the sweat glands are activated, and that is why in these persons there will be more amount of sweating, and there can be alopecia, there can be pruritus in different areas of the body. In the gastrointestinal system, the thyroid hormones also regulate the GI motility. And if the level of thyroid hormone increase, they will actually increase the GI motility, will ultimately lead to diarrhea, anorexia, and vomiting. In the cardiovascular and respiratory system, as thyroid hormones are actually the sympathomimetic type of action. They are actually sympathetic regulatory hormones, so they will act on the beta 1 receptor. And if the beta 1 receptor activated in the heart, they will also ultimately increase in heart rate, the pumping and the cardiac output will be increased. So basically, increase in the heart rate and increase in the power of contraction of the heart also. That is why if the thyroid hormone level is so much increased that sometimes the cardiac output are more, though the person will be having the heart failure. So that is known as high cardiac output heart failure. We'll discuss this later. Just for now, you should understand that the increased level of thyroid hormone will lead to increased pulse, increase in heart rate. And it will also act on the beta 2 receptor present in the smooth muscles and present in the other smooth muscle of lung also. And if the smooth muscle of lung are stimulated, they will ultimately cause bronchoconstriction. And if there is bronchoconstriction, that will lead to dyspnea. And sometimes so on acting on the alpha 1 receptor, it will ultimately lead to vasoconstriction. So if there is a vasoconstriction in the body, there will ultimately lead to increase in total peripheral resistance. So the arterioles will get constricted, and due to which the total peripheral resistance will be increased, and it will lead to isolated diastolic hypertension. What it means, if we take example, let's suppose any person is having blood pressure of 120 upon 100 mm of mercury. So there the systolic blood pressure is normal, but the diastolic is only increased. So this is isolated diastolic increase in blood pressure. So such type of scenario will be seen in the hyperthyroidism. Another thing, in the eye, there can be the features of exposure keratitis. As we know that usually the thyroid hormone will basically lead to the fibrocyte activation. Let me explain this. See, the thyroid hormones will ultimately cause mucopolysaccharide and glycosamine glycan deposition in extraocular muscle of eye. And due to this, there will be exophthalmos, or we can say there will be proptosis. And due to the exophthalmos and proptosis, there will be exposure keratitis. It means that the eyelids are not able to close properly, and due to which the large amount of the air, dust, sand can enter into your eyes, and it will ultimately cause the infection in the cornea, infection in the conjunctiva. So there can be features of exposure keratitis, like there can be the grittiness sensation in eye, there can be the sandy sensation in your eyes, there can be excessive lacrimation, and sometimes there can be diplopia, there will be loss of the visual acuity. And basically in the eye, the most common muscle that is involved is inferior rectus. So inferior rectus is the most commonly involved muscle, and due to which there will be development of diplopia in the person. So in the hyperthyroidism patient, or we can say in the Graves' disease, in the eye will be having exophthalmos or proptosis. There will be the features of exposure keratitis, that is lacrimation, sandy sensation, gritty sensation, and diplopia and loss of visual acuity. In the central nervous system, there can be the anxiety, insomnia, depression, psychosis, and in the reproductive system there can be oligomenorrhea. Oligomenorrhea means there will be decrease in the menstrual days. It means that the amount of blood, the bleeding amount is very much reduced, or you can say that the menstrual cycle will be very much disturbed or absent also. It can lead to infertility. So if there is if there will be absence of menstruation, there can be infertility. It can also lead to spontaneous abortion. It will lead to loss of libido, impotence. So these are some of the clinical features we saw in the hyperthyroidism patient. So now let's talk about the examination finding in case of the hyperthyroidism. So the most reliable finding in the examination, so there will be resting tachycardia. Or you can say whenever the person is sleeping, normally if we sleep, the pulse rate is actually decreased during the sleeping stage. But in the person of hyperthyroidism, the pulse will be increased during sleep also. Or you can say there is a resting tachycardia. So this is the most reliable finding. And another thing, as the beta 1 receptor is stimulated by the thyroid hormones, they will lead to increase in the contractility, and due to which there will be loud S1 sound, and there will be, as the power of contraction of the heart is increased. So let's suppose this is the heart, and let's suppose this is the arc of aorta. Now if the heart is contracting very vigorously, very forcefully, then it goes in the arc of aorta in such a fashion that normally the entry of the blood from the ventricles to the aorta do not produce a sound. But now, as the contraction is so much vigorous that it is producing a kind of sound, the entry of the blood from the ventricle into the aorta is also producing sound. And this added sound is actually murmur. So the murmur is during the contraction of the ventricle, and it is during the ejection of the blood from the ventricle into the aorta. So that's why the murmur is ejection systolic murmur. So during the systole, you will actually heard a murmur and auscultation. So this will be heard in the patients of hyperthyroidism. And if you actually examine the pericardium of these patients in the hyperthyroidism, if you examine the pericardium area, if you keep your hand in the chest area in the pericardium, then you will feel a very hyperdynamic kind of pericardium in this patient. And usually the mixed edema is not a clinical feature of the hyperthyroidism. Mixed edema is a term basically used to describe the hyperthyroidism. Though also usually in the case of hyperthyroidism, there can be pre-tibial mixed edema. That mixed edema will not be found in any other areas. Only it will be found in the scene of tibia, and it is somehow the non-pitting edema. Non-pitting edema. So this is non-pitting edema in the case of hyperthyroidism in the areas of the lower limb, especially in the tibial area. So this is known as pre-tibial mixed edema. And let's talk about something about the findings of the eye. So see, actually proptosis is not the initial feature in case of the thyroid diseases. In the hyperthyroidism, at first the proptosis will not be evident. At the first, the pattern will be like this. First of all, there will be, whenever the thyroid levels are increased, in the very initial stage there will be no sign, no symptom of the eyes in the eyes. After that, only sign will be developed. That is infrequent blinking, or you can say steering. And this steering is known as still walk sign. Still walk sign. Actually, why there will be infrequent blinking? Let me explain. Actually, there in the eyelid there is a muscle known as Mueller muscle. In eyelid there will be Mueller muscle, and the Mueller muscle is actually sympathetic. It has sympathetic regulation. It has sympathetic regulation, and I already said you that the thyroid hormones are sympathetic regulators. They will act on those all tissues which are actually having sympathetic regulation. So that is why they will act in the Mueller muscle also, and they will cause the contraction of Mueller muscle. So increase in thyroid level will ultimately cause the contraction of Mueller muscle, and if the Mueller muscle will be contracting, so the Mueller muscle contraction will ultimately lead to the lid retraction, and due to which there will be decrease in the frequency of the blinking of the eye, and so you will find that the person is staring at you, but the person is actually the person is not staring. The person is staring due to some underlying pathology. So yes, in the initial stage there will be infrequent blinking, and after that there will be a soft tissue involvement, and later there will be proptosis. Later there will be proptosis, and later there will be exposure corneal involvement. Let's see what in C corneal involvement. That is exposure keratitis. So exposure keratitis is also late finding. The initial finding will be infrequent blinking in this patient. Now another one more thing, that if any person is having a nodular goiter, and let's suppose this goiter is extending. This goiter is extending now. This goiter is now extending in the neck. Then if the goiter is actually, in case of the extension in the neck, if it is pressing the superior vena cava, if it is compressing the superior vena cava, then in that case there will be facial congestion. So whole face looks red. So in that case the whole face looks red in color, and such a sign is known as Pemberton sign. Pemberton sign. So what is Pemberton sign? So whenever there is a parasternal extension of the thyroid goiter, And in that case, if that extension is compressing the superior vena cava, the whole face will be congested, and in that case, the face looks red in color. This is known as Pemberton sign. Now let's talk about the investigation. So in the thyroid, in the hyperthyroidism or in thyrotoxicosis, the first investigation that you will give, that is thyroid function test. And if you suspect any person is having hyperthyroidism by the clinical feature, then you will give a investigation that is thyroid function test, and in that we will see the free T3 and T4 level. So in the person of hyperthyroidism, the free T3 and T4 level will be increased. No matter it is primary hyperthyroidism or it is secondary hyperthyroidism, the free T3 and T4 level will be increased. But if the person is having the primary hyperthyroidism, the TSH level will be decreased. I already explained you that in the primary hyperthyroidism, the problem is in the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland is producing a large amount of T3 and T4, which will actually give the negative feedback mechanism in the pituitary gland, and ultimately there will be decreased level of TSH. So in the primary hyperthyroidism, the TSH will be decreased, and the second is the problem lies in the pituitary. Let's suppose there will be pituitary adenoma, so there is a large amount of TSH production, and this large amount of TSH will ultimately lead to increase in the T3 and T4. So in the secondary, the TSH increases; in the primary, the TSH decreases. Now, what will we doing to confirm the diagnosis? So, if the person is having the primary, let's suppose you will get that the TSH is now decreased. So you have now you suspect the person is having primary hyperthyroidism. So if you suspect the person is having primary hyperthyroidism, to confirm it, usually the most common cause of the primary hyperthyroidism is Graves' disease. So in the Graves' disease, to confirm this, what investigation you will again do? Long-acting thyroid stimulating antibody, that is LATS. So you will send a serological investigation to find out the presence of long-acting thyroid stimulating antibody. If it is also present, then it is confirmed the person is having the Graves' disease. Now, if you suspect this person, let's suppose the TSH level is increased. TSH level is increased. Then now you will try to find out that what is the problem in the pituitary, that the pituitary gland has produced a large amount of TSH. So the problem is basically to find out, you will do an investigation, that is MRI head. So you will give the MRI head. So in MRI head, you can diagnose the pituitary adenoma. So if there will be presence of pituitary adenoma, you can diagnose by the MRI head pituitary adenoma. And you can also do thyroid scan if the person is having any kind of nodular biter. So to rule out, to see the biter is actually warm, or the nodule is warm or cold or hot. So I already discussed this. You will do thyroid scan. And another thing, you will do the CT scan and USG of neck to see the extension of goiter. So these are the investigations we will do in the case of the hyperthyroidism. Now let's talk about the treatment. So the best treatment is oral radioiodine ablation. So you will give the oral radioiodine medicine of the iodine 131. But this drug can be given in all age group, either from the very small age to the old age also this drug can be given. But yes, this drug cannot be given in the pregnancy, as the radioiodine are unsafest in the pregnancy. So in the pregnant, we will give the another drugs. So like in the first trimester, the drug are different, and the second trimester, the drug is different. In the first trimester, the drug of choice is propylthiouracil, as the propylthiouracil will not affect the organogenesis in the first trimester, and the second trimester, the drug we can give, that is carbimazole. And but carbimazole cannot be given in the first trimester, as in the first trimester there will be what? Organogenesis, and if you give the carbimazole in the first trimester, it will ultimately cause the aplasia cutis, that is, it has a teratogenic effect, that is absence of the certain layer of the skin. And if these the medical treatment are not enough, then you will go for the surgical treatment, that is total thyroidectomy. And if the person is have pituitary adenoma, then you will give the transsphenoidal surgery. Just you have to memorize the name. So if the person is having a pituitary adenoma, you have to do the transsphenoidal surgery. So this is the overall treatment of the hyperthyroidism. Thank you. So now let's talk about an important topic, that is thyroid storm. The thyroid storm is basically one of the cause of thyrotoxicosis, in which the thyroid hormones level is massively, abruptly increased in blood. So it is basically intraoperative complication of thyroid surgery. So let's suppose if any person is having the toxic multinodular biter, and if any person comes to you and you are actually physician, and you just saw the large neck, there is a large neck is basically due to the toxic multinodular biter, and you just send the patient to the surgery department for the surgery, and the surgeon is just without properly taking the preoperative preparation, the surgeon has operated the patient, and during the operation, there can be the possibility that if the thyroid, the thyroid gland is massive, in that case, the massive release of thyroid hormone into circulation take place during the surgery. And during the surgery, there will be sudden massive release of the thyroid hormones in the blood, and it will ultimately, it can cause the rapid rise in T3 and T4 during operation. And if there is a rapid rise of T3 and T4 during operation, what the things it can do? The first thing, that rapid rise in T3 and T4 will ultimately burn so much amount of calories, so calorie burn, and it will ultimately increase the body temperature. As the rapid rise in T3 and T4 will ultimately burn the large amount of calories and will increase the basal metabolic rate, increase the body temperature. So the person will be febrile during the operation. First thing. The second thing, it will act on the heart, and on acting the heart rate will shoot up, and there will be high tachycardia. So there will be tachycardia, and the tachycardia will be so much dangerous that this tachycardia will decrease the diastolic time. So decrease in diastolic time means there will be feeling defect. But the heart is contracting in a very abrupt manner. So due to which there will be high output, but there will be cardiac failure. So the person will be having high output congestive cardiac failure. That is high output congestive cardiac failure. The person will be having high output congestive cardiac failure. And yes, there can be the features of pulmonary edema also. The person may develop pulmonary edema features. So such a scenario will be seen in this patient, and the person can die during the operation in the operation table also. So that is why this thyroid storm is the dangerous, the complication that the surgeon can manifest during thyroid surgery. So what is the main reason that of this thyroid storm? So if the patient is operated without adequate preoperative preparation, then there will be massive release of thyroid hormone to circulation and resulting in thyroid storm. And what are the events that can occur in the thyroid storm? That the person will be having high body temperature, due to the massive tachycardia, there can be the high output congestive cardiac failure, and there can be the features of pulmonary edema in this patient also. And what are the ways to prevent this condition? So what we will do to prevent this condition? So before doing operation, so what is the prevention? If the doctor have given Lugol's iodine for 3 to 4 weeks or for few weeks before surgery, then this Lugol's iodine means the iodine in large amount. So this will actually decrease the iodine trapping capacity of gland, and ultimately the size of gland will also increase. Size of gland will be decreased. The T3 and T4 production will be decreased. So if we will give the Lugol's iodine, it will decrease the size of gland, it will decrease the production of T3 and T4, and in that case, the chance of thyroid storm will substantially decrease. So the chance of thyroid storm will substantially decrease. That is why before doing the thyroid surgery, in case of any large goiter, always you should first of all give the Lugol's iodine 3 to 4 weeks before surgery, and this Lugol's iodine will basically shrink the gland, and they will decrease the production of T3 and T4 level in the body, and in this way the chance of thyroid storm will be substantially decreased. Now what we will do if the thyroid storm has occurred? So let's suppose thyroid storm has happened during the operation. Then we already know that if the thyroid storm has occurred, it can cause the high output congestive cardiac failure. So to actually decrease the severity of congestive cardiac failure, switch off the IV fluids. So you should now cut off the IV fluids. You should give the propyl thiouracil. The propyl thiouracil will actually inhibit the conversion of T4 into T3. So active form of T3 will be decreased, and to decrease the heart rate, you can give the propranolol. So propranolol is a non-selective beta blocker, and all the body will be in stress if there will be massive amount of thyroid hormone. So that is why to decrease the metabolic stress in the body, you can give the hydrocortisone, and there can be the features of the metabolic acidosis. So the person can be given soda bicarbonates. So this is basically treatment in case of the thyroid storm. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, and today we will be talking about second part of the thyroid, that is hypothyroidism. So basically there are two main types of the hypothyroidism, that is primary hypothyroidism and secondary hypothyroidism. So I already said you in the hyperthyroidism that if I will tell you about the primary, it means the problem is in underlying gland, that is underlying thyroid gland. So the gland defect can be like the agenesis, this is the congenital. There can be Hashimoto hypothyroidism, there can be endemic goiter, there can be due to any food, goitrogenous food. So these are the causes of the primary hypothyroidism. In the secondary hypothyroidism, the problem is in the pituitary. So somehow there will be damage, or somehow there will be dysfunctional or non-functioning pituitary, due to which there will be decreased amount of TSH secretion, leading to decreased amount of thyroid hormone production. So for example, Sheehan syndrome, Stimmer's disease, cranial irradiation, craniopharyngioma, sarcoidosis, and hemochromatosis. So the clinical features is very much easy. It's just opposite to that of hyperthyroidism. That is, let's suppose in general, we are talking in general, in the hyperthyroidism there was weight loss. So in the hypothyroidism there will be weight gain. Another thing, in the skin, in the hyperthyroidism, there was the palms and the soles all were wet due to especially the sweating, the infrequent sweating. But in the skin is dry, coarse, and yes, there will be alopecia will be present here also. So alopecia is a common feature in the both hyper and hypothyroidism. Another thing, the person will be lethargic, lazy. So the person will be lazy, he will feel laziness, difficulty doing any kind of works. In the gastrointestinal system, so in the hyperthyroidism there was actually the increased GI motility leading to the diarrhea. So similarly, not similarly, just opposite, in the hypothyroidism there will be constipation. There will be decreased GI motility. In cardiovascular system, in the hyperthyroidism there was tachycardia. So here will be bradycardia. And while talking about the blood pressure, what will be effect on blood pressure? So BP will be decreased. So blood pressure will be also decreased. Okay. Another thing, in the now there will be the myxedema of the face. So
First of all, you should learn that what is mixed edema. So mixed edema is a term that is used especially for the hypothyroidism. So hypothyroidism effect on the face will be puffy face. So the face will be swollen, it will be like puffy face, and so similarly the effect in the vocal cords, there will be accumulation of the mucopolysaccharide and the fibroblast. Due to the fibroblast activation, there will be hoarseness developed in the vocal cord. Similarly, in the peripheral tissues, as we know that the metabolism of the lipids are somehow decreased. That is why there will be lipid accumulation in the body in the different areas, and due to the lipid accumulation in the blood vessels, there will be decreased. There will be the patency of the blood vessel, or we can say that the diameter will be decreased due to the underlying lipid accumulation in the blood vessel, due to which there will be increased total peripheral resistance, and which will lead to the isolated diastolic hypertension. So isolated diastolic, only the diastolic blood pressure will be increased. Correct that in the hyperthyroidism I had said you that the isolated diastolic hypertension, that was wrong. In the hyperthyroidism there will be there will be hypertension of both systolic as well as diastolic, but here there will be only diastolic hypertension. That is, let's suppose 120 upon 100 mm of mercury. That is, the systolic blood pressure will be normal, but the diastolic blood pressure is increased. And in the reproductive system, there will be excessive blood flow during the menstrual phase, and that is menorrhagia, and there will be infertility in the person also.
So now let's talk about the examination finding of the hypothyroidism. So the most reliable examination finding of the hypothyroidism is ankle jerk. So whenever we perform ankle jerk in this patient of hypothyroidism, there will be hung up ankle jerk. So what is hung up ankle jerk? So there will be, I said you that in the hypothyroidism there will be mixed edema in the various areas, in the various tissues of the body. Similarly, if there will be mixed edema of the Achilles tendon, the relaxation is delayed. So what is the main reason of mixed edema in case of the hypothyroidism? Basically, in the hypothyroidism, there will be decreased level of T3 and T4 in the blood. That is why there will be compensatory increase in TSH, and if there is a compensatory increase in TSH, so TSH level in the blood will be increased, and due to which it will stimulate the fibroblast present in different tissues. And whenever the fibroblast is stimulated, there will be increased deposition of glycosaminoglycan glycan, and due to the increased deposition of glycosaminoglycan glycan, it results in the osmotic edema and fluid retention in that particular tissue, and due to which the tissue will be somehow like edematous, and due to which there will be different kind of problems occur in the different part of the body. Similarly, in the ankle jerk also there will be hung up ankle jerk. And now there will be bradycardia, there will be isolated diastolic hypertension, there will be coarse skin, and as we know that whatever beta carotene we consume in our diet, that requires in the liver requires thyroid hormone to convert the beta carotene into vitamin A. Now, if the thyroid hormone is absent, or if the thyroid hormone is decreased, then the beta carotene cannot be converted into vitamin A, and due to which there will be accumulation of beta carotene in the body. And if there will be accumulation of beta carotene in the body, there will be yellow discoloration in different areas, yellowish discoloration. And if there will be yellowish discoloration in different areas, then the doctor may be confused with jaundice also. But yes, you should separate the beta carotenemia with the jaundice in a way that in the jaundice, actually we will see the jaundice in the sclera. But if there will be the beta carotenemia, then the yellowish discoloration will not be seen in the sclera. In jaundice, there will be yellowish discoloration in the sclera, but in the beta carotenemia, there will be no yellowish discoloration in the sclera. So in this way, if the other parts are yellow but the sclera is not yellow, then that is beta carotenemia. But if the sclera is also yellow, that is jaundice. So in this way, we will differentiate that either there is a beta carotenemia or jaundice. Thank you.
Now let's talk about the investigation. So at first we will discuss that how we will differentiate between the primary hypothyroidism and secondary hypothyroidism clinically. So in the clinically, how to differentiate? So we know that in the secondary, the main problem is in the pituitary. Main problem is in the pituitary. So in the secondary, so let's suppose in the secondary the pituitary is damaged, and if the pituitary is damaged, the level of TSH will be increased or decreased? Tell me.
Decreased.
Yes. If the pituitary is damaged, the level of TSH will be decreased, and if the level of TSH will be decreased, okay, level of TSH will decrease. In primary, the problem is in the thyroid. So level of TSH will be increased. And another thing, I have already told you that thyroid releasing hormone TRH, this will actually lead to release of TSH plus prolactin. So if due to any reason, if the TRH level will increase, I mean the TRS release increase, it means there will be not only release of the TSS, there will be also release of the prolactin. So you should know this. If due to any cause, if the TRS will increase, then it will also increase the TSS and also increase the prolactin release. So as in the primary case, the TSH is increased and TSH is also increased along with the prolactin. TSH as well as prolactin, both will be increased, and prolactin will actually work on the breast of the female, and it will cause galactorrhea. It will cause galactorrhea. So in the primary hypothyroidism, there will be presence of galactorrhea, but in the secondary, the TSH will be decreased and the prolactin will also be decreased. So there will be no galactorrhea. So if any patient of hypothyroidism will come and you are suspecting that you are in confusion of the primary or secondary, just see galactorrhea is present or not. If the galactorrhea is present, the patient is of primary hypothyroidism. If the galactorrhea is absent, the patient is of secondary hypothyroidism. Okay, so now I think you understood this concept. So now let's talk about the investigation. So again, the investigations are same. So we should check the level of free T3, T4, TSH. Okay, and the thing, you should do the CT scan USG again. CT scan USG. So now let's talk about the investigation more. So if the TSH will be increased, there will be, that is signifying the primary hypothyroidism. In this, the most common cause is Hashimoto thyroiditis. So we should perform certain tests like thyroid peroxidase antibody, antimicrosomal antibody, antithyroglobulin antibody. So these are some of the tests which will, if these are present, that will be confirmatory of the Hashimoto thyroiditis. And if the TSH will be decreased, it signifies the secondary hypothyroidism. And for the secondary hypothyroidism, MRI head should be done to see what kind of the problem is in the pituitary gland. And if you will see the chest X-ray, in the chest X-ray you can find the water bottle heart. Actually, in the hypothyroidism, there will be pericarditis, especially the serous pericarditis. So the heart will be having serous pericarditis, and due to the serous pericarditis, there will be in the ECG, you will be basically finding the low voltage ECG, and there will be the electrical alternates. So serous pericarditis means there will be serous fluid in the pericardium, around the pericardium. So inflammation as well as the serous fluid around the pericardium, and if there is serous fluid around the pericardium, the voltage, the electrical activity will be hindered by the fluid present around the heart, and that's why there will be low voltage ECG. And as the pericardium has now swollen, so heart is beating in the large chamber, so there will be electrical alterance. And so due to these things, in the chest X-ray also there will be water bottle shaped heart. And in the hypothyroidism, there I said you that all the basal metabolic functions are decreased. That is why the lipid metabolism is also decreased. That's why the cholesterol level in the body will be somehow increased. That is why lipid profile can be done in these patients. And thyroid hormone are basically important for the cell division. And in the formation of RBC also, if the thyroid hormone level is low, the cell division is somehow hampered, and that is why whatever the cells present, they will be enlarged, and there will be decrease in number of hemoglobin. That is why there will be macrocytic anemia. So in the peripheral blood smear, you will find that there will be macrocytic anemia. So these are the investigation findings you will be seen in the patient of hypothyroidism. Now let's talk about treatment. So the main treatment is either the disease is primary or secondary. Regardless of the cause, the treatment remains the same. That is, you should give the lifelong levothyroxine. So you should give the lifelong levothyroxine, and the dose for the lifelong levothyroxine is basically 1.6 microgram per kg. So yes, this is the dose. So patients should take the lifelong levothyroxine, that is 1.6 microgram per kg. Now let's talk about a very last topic, that is mixed edema coma. So to understand this, let's take an example. So let us suppose there is a female, there is a 60-year or 70-year female, and let's suppose this female is having the hypothyroidism. Let's suppose this female is having hypothyroidism, and this female is not getting any kind of treatment. Maybe the reason is that her family members are not taking care of her, or they are not buying her any medicine in our scenario. So as the world population are neglected in our scenario, that is why let's suppose that this is a 60 or 70-year female who is a patient of hypothyroidism, and she is not taking any kind of tablets for the hypothyroidism. So she is having all the features of hypothyroidism, that she is having cold intolerance, she is having all other features of hypothyroidism, and now let's suppose she has got a disease, UTI or pneumonia or any kind of illness she get now, and due to this UTI or pneumonia, she suddenly
her pulse became feeble, and her blood pressure lowers, and at last she goes in coma. She was loss of consciousness. So why the patient of hypothyroidism ultimately goes in loss of consciousness and coma? As if any illness occurred, that illness requires, the illness requires energy. So to combat that illness, our body requires energy, and to actually derive energy, thyroid hormones have a very basic role. So to actually thyroid, I have said that thyroid hormones help in calorie genesis, calorie burning. So to burn the calorie and to get out the energy, there will be requirement of the thyroid hormones. But if there is already a low level of thyroid hormone and she is getting any kind of disease, which is again consuming the remaining energy also is again consumed, then the patient will be having very feeble pulse, or BP will be decreased, and she will be loss of consciousness, coma. So such a scenario is known as mixed edema coma. As the hypothyroidism is letting her into coma, that is why it is known as mixed edema coma. In the patients of mixed edema coma, in the ECG wave, the PR interval will be increased. The PR interval will be increased. Another thing, the RR interval will also be increased, and there will be J wave. J wave means just after the S, there will be like this. So this wave is J wave, which was not normally present in the ECG, but in this patient, the presence of J wave. J wave present in the patients of mixed edema coma. What is the treatment? The treatment is so what is the treatment? Treatment is rewarming of patient. So again, rewarming of patient. As he is having in cold intolerance, so you should rewarm the patient. Another thing, you should give the IV levothyroxine, or you can also give the leothyronine. So this is the treatment of the mixed edema coma.